One, ladies and gentlemen, the long-awaited, highly anticipated Dr.Chuck Zorumski, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Chuck, you were such a big hit, we had to have you back.
Well, thanks, Kevin. It's great to be here, and I think today, I think we're going to talk a little bit about goalkeeping and maybe some of the mental aspects and the mindset of a goalkeeper, perhaps a bit. At the outset, I'll give you the disclaimer. The first one is I'm not a sports psychologist, so I don't really claim to know any sports psychology. I am a psychiatrist, so I know something about human behavior, a little bit about mental illness, and a bit about how the human brain works. And then I was a goalkeeper and a coach for a good chunk of my life. So I guess what we'll talk about today will be kind of based on all of that, but it's not sports psychology is what I would say.
Right. And if you got anything, a personal note to the whale, hit me off air, please.
Okay, will do.
Yeah. I have Medicaid, so I hope that insurance will cover it. So here we are, Dr. Chuck. Did you get some schooling on the mindset approach to the position when you were a young lad at Holy Rosary and DeAndre's and SLU?
Yeah, Kevin, yes, the answer is yes. And then some of the stuff I learned was, as I played and was around a lot of players and that, I actually started out as a forward. So I'm left-handed, left-footed. So they had me playing inside left in the old MW system when I was like third or fourth grade. But I ended up gravitating to being a goalkeeper by the time I was 10 years old or so. I just loved the position. I thought it was fascinating, and so I thought that was just great. And then, like we talked the last time, I grew up around a really great St. Louis goalkeeper, Joe Wright. And Joe was a little older than I was, and he really had a big impact in terms of emphasizing to me that a goalkeeper, which is something I never really thought about, like a goalkeeper has to be a big communicator when they're on the field. You must talk, and you must talk loudly and clearly about how the game is being played. So that had a big impact on me, and so I learned that, pretty early. By the time I was 12, 14 years old, I kind of had that kind of in my head. But it's still a tough thing for a young goalkeeper to go out and try to take charge of what goes on in the backfield and everything. So that kind of evolved through high school. And when I was a senior in high school, I had a really good coach who kind of taught me the importance of never walking on the field for a game without being really mentally prepared to go play. Something I never really thought about as a younger player, but as a senior in high school, it had a huge impact on me, and I really carried that forward kind of with everything I did since that time and things I tried to coach and other things like that. And then I had a great coach when I was at St. Louis U, was Miguel de Lima, was a former Brazilian national team goalkeeper, and was almost like a personal mentor for me. And he spent a lot of time talking to me about how the game's played, how to think about the game, how to get yourself ready to play, and then what attitude you had to have when you walked on the field. So that's I was really very lucky to have all those people. And then, as you and I talked last time, I had the privilege of coaching St. Louis U's soccer team for like a dozen years with Joe Clark. And Joe was not a goalkeeper. Matter of fact, the goalkeepers at SLU would always come to me to talk about what the issues were, because I didn't want to talk to Joe because I didn't think he knew anything about goalkeeping. But Joe was actually great. There were so many things he taught the players about positioning and about how to think about how to play the game that really had an impact on me. So I actually got better at all of this as I got to be a coach in my late 20s and 30s, and so yeah.
Well, hats off to Joey Clark. The dude was ahead of his time. The state-of-the-art of goalkeeping nowadays is called the Goalplayer from Franz Hoek over there in Holland. And and he talks about being one of the 11. So there ain't 10 plus the goalkeeper. It's 11. It's 11.
Yeah, it's really true, and the evolution has been, from the time in the 70s where it wasn't the case at all, through the 80s where goalkeepers started to become sweeper keepers in some ways. I mean, there were certain goalkeepers that really picked that up, like the players out of Mexico really had that in their head, and then the evolution is to be, a player on the field. But I will say, maybe something that's heretical to all of that, which is the goalkeeper is still an odd position. And if you're going to play it, you have to be ready for the fact it is an odd position. Like, for example, you're playing a game with 22 players on the field, and there are only 2 of you on the field who can use your hands. That immediately makes you an odd player, right? I mean,
right.
So that's that. But now the keepers have much more foot skill than they used to. And you watch the players, the pro players these days, and even high-level amateur players. They're really terrific with their feet, but they still are an odd duck, with the fact that they do use their hands. And then I would also say that while the keepers play out now and push up more to be involved in the play, it's a great thing for the sport and for just how the game is played. But at the same time, you own a piece of real estate, and that real estate's called the penalty area, and it must be yours. Other places on the field you can participate in, depending on how far up the field you go. But when it comes to the penalty area, it's yours, and that better be your mindset. You own the penalty area, and that's the mindset of a goalkeeper. You must have that in your head if you're going to play. The other aspect to the goalkeeping, in my opinion, is that you're playing a low-scoring game, right? 2-3 goals may be it for the game if you're lucky sometimes, and so you carry the burden that if you give up 1 or 2 goals, your team's likely to lose. And that's a mental toughness thing to kind of get used to. So it doesn't matter how well you can play with your feet. If you can't stop shots and you can't prevent goals, you're not going to make it as a goalkeeper, kind of plain and simple. And that's kind of a harsh lesson, but I think it's important for players who are developing to really kind of think about it. And then a third thing that I'll put out if you think that this is good stuff to talk about, and that is that even if a keeper pushes up the field and is playing with their feet, they are extremely unlikely to win a game for their team. Unlikely for a goalkeeper to score a goal to actually win a game. Although I will say, when I was older, toward the end of my career, I'd taken so many shots at slew goalkeepers that I was taking penalty kicks for some of the teams that I was playing on because I had done so many of them in practice with goalkeepers. But keepers don't win games by scoring goals. Keepers keep their team in games and win games by not giving up, kind of thing. That's a very different kind of mindset. But at the same time, a goalkeeper can lose a game. So you get lost on the field and get out of position, and you give up a bad goal, you've just lost the game for your team. So that's the burden, I think, that goalkeepers carry. I don't know if that resonates with you, Kevin, but that's kind of my perception of the playing, coaching, and kind of how I think about it.
From old school to the new school, you dotted the I's and crossed the T's, Dr. Chuck, and you're well certified for that, boy. I guarantee. Man, my nickname back on the north side was One Shot Whale. 1 shot, 1 goal. I mean, gosh, but it was just, it didn't go through my legs, but just 1 shot. And it's just, that's all it takes.
That's it. You live with that. If you're going to play the position, you live with the fact. Well, so I'm in medicine, so I use medicine analogies, so I don't know how well they work. But there's a specialty in medicine called anesthesiology. Those are the docs that put you to sleep when you're going to get surgery and everything. And they are experts in critical care and managing the cardiovascular system and keeping you breathing and things like that. But in a surgery, most of the surgery for an anesthesiologist is boring. They're not doing much except monitoring things. And that's great. but about 10% of the time, maybe, or something like that, it's sheer pandemonium and panic because something has happened that people may not have been expecting. That sounds like a goalkeeper to me. Much of the game's played in front of you, and you're not necessarily doing much except staying engaged in the game and playing. But then things break down and hell breaks loose, if you will, and you better be ready to adapt to that and that. So we're kind of like anesthesiologists of the sport of soccer in some ways.
Yeah, and it's just like those firefighters. Everybody's running out. At firefighters and stagehands, everybody's running out of the theater except for the stagehands and firemen going inside to get the fire out.
Yeah, absolutely, and protecting everybody and keeping people going, and that's kind of that's almost a microcosm for what soccer, being a goalkeeper in soccer is like. Yeah.
Man, well. In the big picture, Dr. Chuck, you don't know me and I don't know you. We know of each other, but there is something that glues us together, us goalkeepers.
Yep, I think that's absolutely correct, Kevin. And when you heard somebody's been a goalkeeper, and and not the field players who dabble around with it, right? I mean, they don't count, it's kind of fun to do until something bad happens and you lose a big game or things like that. Then it's not so much fun, right? I mean, and you've got to recover from that, and so you understand that about somebody else who's been a goalkeeper, and those goalkeepers, we all deal with it in individual ways, but you carry a burden. If you've played in a big game or even a game that you really want to win and lose, man, that means you've given up a goal. Something didn't work out well, and it may not really have been your fault, but it is your fault because you're the one picking the ball out of the net. So that's kind of a kindred spirit with the folks who have been goalkeepers, no matter what level they've played at.
Man, I tell you, and there was, when you said take the ball out of the net, if those offensive opponent players try to run past me to get the ball out of the net, they didn't make it across the goal line. I smashed that, We'll handle this. We don't need you to take the ball out and do your business,
Man, do I ever agree with that, Kevin? Because it's my space. You're in my penalty area. You leave the ball alone. It belongs to me. The space belongs to me. That's the mindset, right? That's the toughness that you have to have. It was even weirder. You remember playing when fans used to line the field and stuff like that. Right? They'd be some of them would be encroaching on your space.
Oh boy, would they?
And so the ball goes out for a goal kick. Well, in that era, we didn't have a bunch of balls being fed to us to play, so you had to go run down the ball. I did not want people running down the ball for me. I'll get the ball and we'll play in my time. That sort of thing. So that's how intense it would be for me. Just kind of remembering.
Yeah. I tell you, I played a match in Holland, in Haarlem, in the Netherlands, and there it was. The kids, I mean, they were so, holy shit, they almost made me cry. I mean, I just was, out of high school and just graduated, and there it is, those kids, man. I mean, they were on it. I could imagine being a professional goalkeeper and listening to that all the time. You have to, man, tune it out.
Oh, man, is that ever important, Kevin? Goalkeepers must be hyper-focused at all times, right, when they're playing. Hyper-alert and hyper-focused to what's going on the field, and you have to filter out all the extraneous stuff that's going on around you. Matter of fact, there's a famous psychology experiment I was thinking about. I knew we were going to be talking about this today. And there's a famous psychology experiment. You may have heard of it. It's called the invisible gorilla. And the way this thing works is that you're watching a film, and it's maybe 5, 6, 7 individuals who are passing a basketball around. And your job is to count how many passes they make during the time they're on the screen. Well, what happens is in the middle of this, or sometimes during it, some character comes out dressed in a gorilla suit, walks onto the stage, turns to the camera, so you're seeing them full on, and beats on their chest. Then they exit the stage. Well, afterwards, they ask you how many passes were completed, and you say, a dozen or whatever it happened to be. And then they go, did you see the gorilla? And a lot of people see the gorilla. Maybe I think maybe 50-50 or 60-40 will see the gorilla. Some of us never see the gorilla. I almost never saw the gorilla in any of those things until I knew I was supposed to look for a gorilla. And I say that because we see these things because it tells you about memory, attention bias, and other kinds of stuff. And so, in a way, we get chastised because we didn't see the gorilla, so you don't see everything that's happening. Well, the truth is, as I think about it, if you're a goalkeeper, I don't want my goalkeepers seeing the gorilla. I want my goalkeepers knowing where the ball is and where it's going next, and then being able to follow it. Does that make sense to you? That's kind of how I perceive it. But it's called the invisible gorilla. If anybody looks at it, I think you can find the video, actually.
Wow. Well, Dr. Chuck, you made dollars. You made dollars, man. No cents around here. That was splendid. Right on, man. Wow. And I can't remiss to be able to say that when you talked about that area, is that I remember sprinting the hell out. They would have their back to me, and I would sprint the hell out. And when they just was going to turn, bang, I'm right there to get the ball. And what the hell you doing out here? I'm like, past the penalty spot. Hey, game on, man. I can use my hands, and people not expecting you to go out. They're looking around to trying to settle the ball and what they're going to do. And then they got this guy running, going after the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the key things, though, is if you go for the ball in the penalty area, wherever, if you go for the ball, you must win it. You cannot afford as a goalkeeper to make some halfway attempt at the thing. You've got to win the ball and play it on and get it out and things like that as best you can. I would tell the goalkeepers there are two safest places for the ball when you're playing goal. One is in your hands. That's the safest place for the ball because nothing can happen when the ball's in your hands. Second safest place is get it out of bounds if you can get it out of bounds because nothing happens to you coming out from a ball that goes out of bounds. I mean, you may have to play against a corner kick or whatever else, but you can adjust all of that. But that, Kevin, that's a great description of going out and winning the ball. The same thing's true of the balls played in the air into the box, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
You must be able to win those crosses, or if you can't win them cleanly and catch it, you've got to play it on wide, get the ball wide with your fists, with punching the ball wide, and that sort of thing. But you've got to get the ball out of danger because in the middle of the field is bad news for a goalkeeper.
Oh, man. I mean, your grandmother could score, lofted over you.
She probably did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely.
And so we talked about the mindset as we cross the line to go onto the pitch. Obviously, if you're driving to the game, you don't want to be thinking about the game. You want to be aware of the situation at hand. But when would you recommend for yourself or for others to start really focusing on the game, physically, mentally, and spiritually?
Yeah, it's a great description, Kevin. And for a player who has to drive to the game, and that if I could get somebody else to do the driving, I was ecstatic because it meant I could think more about what I had to do. But I would start prepping for games, and this is when I was playing, St. Louis U for sure, beyond St. Louis U, playing with Budweiser when I was over 30, which was an absolutely great team. I picked up the idea that the rhythms of certain music was really helpful for me. First of all, to relax and to focus. Relax is not the right word, but it helped me to feel calmer and to think seriously about what I did. So I would listen to almost the same songs repeatedly. Matter of fact, my two boys who will hear this podcast, they'll bust out laughing because they said they knew every Sunday when I was getting ready to leave the house to go play, there would be two songs that would be played. Now this is kind of almost like a family joke. One would be Carlos Santana's song "Soul Sacrifice" from Woodstock. I would play that almost every time before I played. And the other was Jimi Hendrix, "All Along the Watchtower." Those songs resonated in my head, and they helped me to focus and things. And then when you get to the field, I would try to be early enough, a half hour or better before the game. I love SLU because you had to be there an hour in advance, at least. And then you could sit there and focus on what you were going to do, And I was rarely the conversationalist during those kinds of times. It was more thinking about what I had to do, and just getting as mentally prepared as possible.
Okay. Now I gotta go with the knife and fork. What do you mean? What I gotta do?
It's like I don't know what I'm going to have to do when I get on the field. I just know I have to pay attention. I'm the player on the field. As a matter of fact, I came to view myself after I was coaching for a while as the real role of a goalkeeper is you're a coach on the field. Only you're in one of the greatest places because the play should always be in front of you. And so you see the players moving, and it's to hyper-focus and pick up the movement of the ball. So I rarely worried too much. If we had the ball in the offensive end, particularly the offensive third, I rarely worried too much about what we did with the ball. I was more looking for where were the players who were on the other team trying to get themselves free of the defense and creating the problems for us. And I would be hyper-focused and talking to the players about where the open players were on the field, even if we had the ball. And then when we lost the ball, it was turning around and picking up where the movement was and where the ball was likely to go to the open players. That's what I mean, what I had to do. And then physically, what are you going to have to do? Like I said, Kevin, and you know this well. I mean, sometimes you just sit there and you feel like you're twiddling your thumbs because you're not really part of what goes on. And then all of a sudden, on the drop of a dime, man, you got to react and you got to do something. And it's being prepared to do that. That's what I mean by what I have to do. Yeah, it's a great question.
I'm practicing mental toughness right now because that was the one shot, one goal whale.
Yeah, well, isn't that horrible, right? I mean, that's horrible to come out of there, and that's what happens, though.
Yeah,
and you don't know before the game starts what you're going to have to do, but you just know you're going to have to do something before it's over.
And I wouldn't change it for nothing. It was what magnificence, and then to have somebody say, "Well, that was the best save I've ever seen in my life."
Yeah, and you kind of love that because that's kind of why you're there, right?
Yeah.
But this focusing on the players in space and who's getting open and things. This also goes back to stuff I learned from Joe Clark. God, if Joe Clark said this once, he said it thousands of times at St. Louis U and when I was coaching with him, and it is getting on the players about not ball watching on the field, because the tendency is to watch where the ball is and then just kind of watch and say, okay, blah, 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 the ball's going there, so be it. You can't do that. You have to be thinking ahead of where the ball is likely to be going and where is the likely danger. For a goalkeeper, where's the likely danger coming from, at all times, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Magnificent. Wow. Well, I tell you, it's almost like, when you talk, I got to take notes. I mean, it's you open up. It's like a whack-a-mole, you open up so many points. Holy cow. So the whole idea behind that real mind, Do you, and they, the, I guess in the 90s, it was called audio visualization.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea that you could visualize what was happening. Sports psychologists are really good at this, by the way, which is mentally thinking about what you're going to have to do, and visualizing what you're going to do. And there's a chunk of that can happen with goalkeeping. But I refer to goalkeepers as read and react defenders, and their job is to read the game and react to whatever circumstance gets played out on the field. And so sometimes the visualization would be, what are the likely scenarios that are going to go? And then if the other team's got some really dangerous players, and they're great players in that, you must know where they are on the field almost at all times. You cannot lose them on the field. So that's the essence of that hyper focus and don't ball watch and all of that kind of stuff. But you are a read and react defender. I used to tell the goalkeepers at SLU, now this is going to sound horrible, but in practices I would talk to them about playing and how to think. And I said, you must read and react to what goes on. I do not want you guessing about what's going on in the field. You must learn to know what's going to happen on the field, kind of in front of you. And I would say things like, if I wanted you to guess, I'd have you take a math or science course. but as a goalkeeper, you react to the play that's developing in front of you, and that's how you adjust your position in that.
Yeah, this, statistics and so forth and this and that. But the deception of it all, everybody's got to understand, stop. React to what is in front of you, what is going down, not what you hope or think it's going to go. Somebody like the body mechanics of someone. Listen, they're human. If they do this, they can't do that. And so the body mechanics will determine. And so if they hit it with the wrong side of their foot or this or that, or hit a bump, you're reacting. You're so focused, you're on it. I can't. And then another thing about the terminology, about the words that you would use, the phrases that you would use. Would you, I guess Joe, would say this and that, and then when you said it to your defense, they would say, hey, what do you do? Did you talk to Joe Wright? That's what he says all the time. But, having a unique terminology, or a terminology that you and your defender knows right off.
Yeah, and the defenders learn to trust your judgment if you play. The hardest thing is to walk on the field with 10 other players that you don't really know, because you're not sure how they're going to react to what you have to say. I'll come back to also a little bit about talking to players and which is, because this is so important, Kevin. But as you've played with a set of players, and it was wonderful playing at SLU. The backs and the midfielders and everybody, the forwards were their own beasts and everything like that, and most of the time they're not tracking back from the penalty area to help out completely. They do track back, but they're not really the penalty area defenders. But those defenders come to rely on your judgment about where things are likely to break down, and they come to trust, and that becomes the trust with players. This is one of the great aspects of the game, in my opinion, is that you develop a kind of a relationship like that with the players, and they with you. And they know you're going to be there, and do that. This also gets to something else that I've seen goalkeepers do over the years that I really don't like, and that is a goal gets scored, and you'll see it in the pro players even to the present. A goal gets scored, and the goalkeeper's chewing somebody out. I think that is complete garbage to actually do that to a player on the field. Remember, those players on the field are running the length of the field, sometimes 90 to 120 minutes. They get tired and they make mistakes. Your job is always to lift them. None of those players are trying to mess up. They just do it out of fatigue or, maybe they're a little bit hurt or whatever else. Your job is to lift them, not criticize them. I mean, I really feel very strongly about that.
And that's why you're well certified, Doc Chuck, is that you don't get on nobody gets on you. I mean, that's how, yeah, man. I mean, you treat everybody like you.
That's a good point, Kevin. I didn't accept it the other way either. I don't want to hear about how I screwed up, man. Believe me, I know how I screwed up. But after the game, we can talk about what might have went wrong and everything like that. But on the field, we're there to lift each other and to play as best we can.
Yeah, I believe you said during the Billiken years, you were roommate of Joe Ham.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And and all the rest of the fellas and stuff. Would you move around salt shakers and pepper and the milk and everything to scope out a game situation on the table or anything?
Yeah, sometimes we would do that. Although we didn't do as much of it as you might think. The other thing I'll tell you, Kevin, is back in that era, I was kind of a sheltered kid from North St. Louis in some ways. I knew virtually nothing about the players we played against when we were playing at high level and things like that. I mean, I pick up random intelligence, as they say, kind of in the military, and that would come from players like Joe Ham or Mike Siri, Dan Counts, and others who were playing for some of the national programs already, kind of at that point, and they would know some of the players, so you would know kind of those players were on the field. But a lot of the times, what happened at SLU, we had no film of games. I never watched a film of a game that I knew what other team was going to do. We sorted it out when we were on the field by watching what the players did on the field. You quickly knew what foot they preferred. You quickly knew how they liked to play, and you for sure learned very quickly who had high-level skill that was likely to be able to take you apart at the drop of a hat. And then, like I said, players like a Joe Ham and folks like a Bruce Hudson playing in the back, Joe Clark playing in the back, Bob Madison. I mean, these guys were awesome at reading the game and then transmitting on the field that knowledge to me, about kind of what to expect and what to look for.
Wow.
And vice versa, I would watch for them as well and have the same kind of conversation, but never in a negative or mean-spirited kind of way. They were there to do their jobs, and I was there to do my job. Yeah.
Man, yeah. And that's respect before you get across that line. It doesn't, if you don't have it before, you probably won't get it in there, Yeah. Wow, man. And so what about seeing guys 5, 10, 20, 40, 50 years from the day you all sweated and toiled together?
Oh, man. They are, I don't see them often enough, and I kind of regret that. So one of the things now I'm at the age I am is to make it back to more of SLU games and things and see a gang of folks like Mark Demling. How did I forget him as a back? He was unbelievable. A Denny Hadigan, who was really a dear friend through college and beyond, and seeing those guys, multiple, Tom Pellizzero that you and I both know, just great individuals like that, and seeing them again now as they're all of our lives kind of trying to move forward is really a thrill. And I will say something else, is that those guys who played those team sports like that, particularly the ones who made it to higher levels, they did really well. There's some that struggled with life and everything like that, but most of them did really well. And they learned how to play. And the lessons learned on a soccer field translate to how you behave as part of other teams and other folks that you have to work with. So those are just great individuals to be around.
Wow. So Sigmund Freud and all the rest of them, they were a little bit of a teammate. The players, did they talk to the team concept?
Some did, and some really talk about that, kind of from the perspective of the psychology of that. Sometimes it gets too focused on the individual and not enough on the individual as part of a society and part of a team and part of a group. I mean, because in many ways, the group becomes part of your brain, right?
Yeah.
They help you to function. And if you got the wrong group around you, you end up in trouble, right? I mean, that's the lesson of teenagers and adults, for that matter. But if you got the right folks around you, they kind of lift you and they make you play better. They play better at life, frankly.
Wow, baby. Wow. Yeah, you go, baby. I guarantee. You got 5 more minutes for the wheel?
Sure. I'm okay, man. I hope this is helpful. I don't usually have conversations like this about this. So you're hearing a lot of unfiltered stuff that I've thought about over a while.
Well, I'll upload it, download it, send it out to you, and you can put it you can put it on Classroom. we
I give it to my 2 boys and my grandkids.
All right. Okay. But yeah, if we run down Joe Wright, we'll tell them all about it.
Yeah, and I'd be curious what Joe has to say. Matter of fact, I don't think Joe knows how big of an impact he had on me. When we were kids growing up and everything, we went off just different paths.
Yeah, same way with me. Joe Wright with the Cougar, the Kroger cap on, and he talked about how to map out the 6-yard box for angles.
Yeah.
And we used to be able to do that because of the dirt and grass. And you would do it, and you would, you hyper focus that you got it right. And then at halftime, you go down on the other side and see if that keeper knew anything.
Yeah, Kevin, that is exactly right. And when you played on turf back in that era, even through the 80s, you could put pieces of tape on the field. Sometimes they didn't even know you had done it, that it marked where the middle was, even out to the top of the box and things like that. So you knew where the middle was all the time. Now, I think that's now all illegal to do that. They don't let you put stuff down on the field. But at the same time, there are ways to figure out kind of what is the line like and figure out where because that's a Miguel de Lima lesson, right? Wherever you are on the field, you must know where the goal is and where the middle is and where your angles are. That's the stuff you pay attention to. So you're looking over your shoulder, where am I, and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's a great. So you learned that from Joe, and Joe taught me a chunk of that as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then I had his older brother, Warren Domatina.
Oh man, played for Kudus and multiple other teams.
Yeah.
One of my heroes when I was a kid. I thought he was just great. Yeah.
Oh man, and he put me in the sand pit, and
yes.
yeah, build it.
Yeah, we're taking our 11-year-old grandson, our 11 and soon to be 9-year-old grandsons to the beach in about a week or so, and that's with my son and I. That's the plan, is to get him in the sand on the beach. So he's got a real thrill coming.
Oh, beautiful, baby, beautiful. Diving into the pool was, off the diving board and this and that, but get me in a sandbox. Come on, baby. I could do some. Yeah, I'd do some. And he talked about the Europeans taught him how they would even just have sand in a box, so your shoulder width apart, and you're in the box, and you leap out to get the ball in the grass.
Yeah, and those techniques you learn become really critical. I mean, this is the one question, and one thing people sometimes ask me about is, what the difference between practice and playing games. Well, practice is just overlearning the skills of being a goalkeeper, how to fall, how to position yourself, how to hit the ground and things like that, and how to get back up really quickly, because making a save that puts you on the ground is not the end of the world. You better get up, and if you didn't hang on to the ball, you better get up and be ready for the next play as fast as you possibly can. By the way, those are actually those overlearned goalkeeping things that you and I did way too much of through our life, are probably life-saving kinds of skills. And what I mean by that, you and I both live in a neighborhood where the streets are uneven and the sidewalks are uneven. So, even if you're a reasonably decent athlete and runner, you're going to catch your foot sometime and go stumbling. Well, those lessons of how to fall after your feet have been taken out from you, which goalkeepers instinctively know how to do from all the training, literally save you from bad injuries. I mean, you end up on your side and you take a little bit of scrape, but you never suffer the big injury that somebody who falls flat does. So how's that? Goalkeeping training is a life-saving skill.
Dr. Chuck, under full disclosure, you're getting into my head, because that's what I was going to mention about slipping on the ice. Hey, you only get one chance to do this right. And bang, you tuck and roll, baby. I fell off a ladder, and it was because of goalkeeping practices that allowed me to do the deal. And
absolutely. Or you miss a step on the stairs,
oh,
and for whatever reason, it's dark and you're in a place you don't know. Yeah, and you find yourself kind of, on the way to something bad, and then you instinctively turn,
yes,
land on your side, and roll out of it. I can't unlearn it. Well, thank God I can't unlearn it. It's so deeply ingrained.
Yeah. Wow, man. Well, it's I gotta tell you, showbiz really helped me. Is that because there was the opening of The Music Man. They were on a train, and you got to know the territory. And I looked and I said, how am I going to do the Joe Wright on the AstroTurf? I didn't even think of the tape. And I was able to look around, and so they talk of the angles from the pyramid, the triangle from the ball to the goalpost, and the goalkeeper in the middle of it, right? And move yourself around. And there's spots. So the penalty spot is due center, baby. And the top of the arc, that's due center. And then down from the arc is 5, where it comes to the line. The middle of the 18 is 4. The corner spot of the penalty area is number 3. The corner of the 6-yard box is 2, and the middle between the end line and the 6-yard box is 1.
Yes, and that is how you learn the angles. I was just thinking, that triangle that you described, and just what you went through. What great lessons for young goalkeepers. Like I said, our 11-year-old grandson is playing and trying to become a goalkeeper. And one Sunday after he had played on Saturday, my son's talking to me, and he says, how do we help him, not get lost on the post and get pulled too far over? I says, there's a drill that you can do where you use a rope that allows you to form that triangle so that you can visually see kind of what the angles. Joe Wright did a version of this, by the way, when I was younger. It's really helpful. And then our grandson goes out. He's got Monday practice then after this conversation, and he's being coached by a great coach, Tim Cashel, for Scott Gallagher.
Oh, name dropper.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tim played at SLU.
Yeah.
What a great, not only a great player, but a great coach, because he's so thoughtful about the game. Well, Monday, long story short, Monday night, Tim has ropes out at the practice, and Eric calls me afterwards, and he busts out laughing. He goes, "You'll never believe what Tim's doing tonight with the kids." So, yeah.
There you go, man. I mean, when it works, when it's good and it works, why change it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Chuck, as that 5 minutes is coming up, that imaginary bell is that it's common to say at Whale Certified, Doctor, whatever you want to say to who you ever want to say it to, for as long as you want to say it for. This is your opportunity.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Kevin. And I've mentioned a number of them. I mean, Joe Wright when I was younger, Joe Clark in the years playing and coaching with him. Miguel de Lima was an absolute stellar mentor in that. So and then multiple other coaches, Harry Keogh and Val Pelzer. I was just around great people, and really am lucky to have been around that. And I was around incredible players, and they made me better. And I hope I did okay for them. That's the bottom line. But the things I think about, is what the mental toughness is of this position, and it's stuff that you just have to be ready. If you're going to play the position, you've got to be ready for some things. One is you are going to get scored on. Two, you're going to lose. Sometimes you're going to lose big games. Probably you're going to lose a big game here and there, or maybe multiple big games. And the third lesson, which I hate to bring up, is you are going to get hurt. If you play the position long enough, you're going to get injured. It just goes with the territory. But if you're playing a competitive sport, a physical sport like soccer, you're going to get hurt, and you just learn to deal with it. It's just part of what you do, and then you're there to help your players around you do the best that we all can do. And sometimes that works magic, and you end up with major championships. And so it can happen.
Yeah, man. Dr. Chuck, I mean, it's been off the charts, baby. And that grandson of yours, I'm looking forward to that. And
I don't know if he is, but
yeah, man. But I hope I had my conduct to where I'll be able to be invited again to have spend some time talking goalkeeping with you.
So sounds good, Kevin. Well, I really appreciate you taking an interest in all of this and inviting me to hang out with you for a while. So this is a huge amount of fun for me.
Beautiful, baby. All right, then. So you're well certified Hall of Fame. You know that. And you know that I know that you know that a lot of people out there, they could be well certified too if they only try.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. That's right. It isn't you've got some unique God-given skill for most of us. It's that you were in the right place at the right time and you had the right attitude, and that covers a whole host of things.
Well, peace to you. So I'll upload it, download it, and you send it out to the kids.
Sounds good, Kevin. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.